What's up, fight fans? I'm Jim Grieshaber. Call me Gries, and I'm joined by my buddy Jeff Cain as we bring you another one of our series. You know, looks back, looks ahead, things like that we love to do here on MMA Weekly, the worldwide leader in mixed martial arts, the most trusted source in news and entertainment in the sport we all love since 2002. And Jeff, what a year it was in 2020. So many hoops to jump through, so many things the UFC had to do just to stay in business, just to keep fighters fighting and keep fans entertained. And what a job they did. We've covered it. We've talked about all the things that Dana White and company were able to do to lead the way for the sports world. And now as we turn the corner and we're into 2021, it feels like it's been forever, doesn't it, since there's been a fight card? We got one coming up this weekend, obviously in Abu Dhabi, Fight Island 3 in a week, and we can't wait. Ferguson Cater, and then Chiesa Magny, and then Conor McGregor, some guy you might have heard of, against Dustin Poirier, number 2. But it seems like it's been forever since we signed off for the last time in 2020, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I mean, we've had a lot of things happen. Christmas, New Year's, unrest. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on. And it does seem like it's been months. It seems like it's been months. And it's probably been, how long has it been? 3 weeks?
Yeah, just a few. And now as we look ahead, and this show right here is looking ahead to 2021 and things that we think we might see, things we want to see, keeping our fingers crossed for with the Ultimate Fighting Championship in MMA in general, Jeff. And as I look back on 2020 and turn the corner into 21, I know one thing I definitely don't want to see, and I'll start with that, not to be a negativist or anything like that, but I don't want to see COVID impacting this sport any more than it has to. I want the crowds back. I want the media days back. I want the big press conferences back. I want the show, the whole kit and caboodle, man. I want it all. I miss it. I want Vegas. I want Vegas back, but I want the UFC back, full bore, fans, the whole nine. And as we start 2021, there will be some fans on Fight Island for Conor McGregor's fight, so that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, fans, you know, it looks like the CDC or Dr. Fauci and even like Ticketmaster and stuff are saying that they expect live events, live concerts, people with crowds to be back this fall. So early on in the year, we're either going to be back in Abu Dhabi or Vegas, you know, bouncing back and forth. But it looks like as the year goes on, we're going to get crowds. We just got to get this vaccine out, man, get everybody to get it. And then hopefully we get back to normal. Like you said, man, I miss the presses or the press conferences. I miss the traditional weigh-ins, the ceremonial weigh-ins, man, with the crowd all there and going crazy. And while I did like the no sound during these events, because I think that they gave the fans an inside look, that we got them a little closer to the sport than maybe they were able to in the past. I'm ready to have fans screaming and yelling and going crazy, right? Where we can hear their cornermen.
Yeah, and I love that they added the coaches in the corner, like when Trevor Whitman's in there. And I'd say mic the coaches, man. If you can use it, you can use it. If you can't, you can't. And I think that's great too. But so many different things. And from a production standpoint, what we've been able to see as fans, overall, grand scheme of things, big success in 2020 for the UFC, but no champions were dethroned in the Octagon. Very interesting, and this speaks to, I think, maybe number one on your list, because you've mentioned it several times. You want to see the champs fight more, and we did not see a lot of that in 2020.
No, we did not. Most of the champions fought just once. And Izzy fought twice. I think maybe Valentina fought twice. Figueiredo fought 2 or 3 times. But outside of that, pretty much all the other champs only fought one time. So I want to see back the championship fights. I want those fight cards with 2 and 3 title fights at the top of the card. Yeah, man, I just want to see the champions back in there. Those are the big fights. That's the best fighter in the world, and that's really what we pay to see. We pay to see the best people in the world, and you don't get any better than the champion.
Yeah, some champs we didn't even see. We saw Kamaru Usman once, you know, and we saw him in December, so it was kind of the end of the year. And even that fight was supposed to be against Gilbert Burns, and Masvidal stepped in last minute. There was a lot of shuffling, a lot of last-minute replacements, a lot of Contender Series fighters getting fights early on, multiple fights early on. But the biggest names in the sport fighting once. I mean, Stipe fought once. Amanda Nunes fought once. We could go up and down the list of champions and fighters, and you know, you can't really fault them. Things that happened throughout this year, and you know, we saw the big retirements with Henry Cejudo and Daniel Cormier and Khabib Nurmagomedov, the forced retirement of Anderson Silva. You know, Shogun stepping away at the end of the year. Just so many things changing in 2020. But as we look forward to 2021, I'm looking to see where the dust settles with all these things, Jeff. So with all the fighters who fought multiple times, with the Kevin Hollands of the world, with the people who took advantage of the situation and were able to climb that ladder a little bit, I'm anxious to see what they do. And the more upper-level fighters and the more champions we see fighting more often in 2021, the better that's going to make it, because the product was pretty damn good. And I'll say this, for lack of big-name fighters fighting as many times as we wanted to see them fight, for example, Conor wanted to fight 3-4 times. We saw him once in January, and that was it against Cowboy, and now he'll kick off this year. But when you throw all those fighters back into that mix and you give them the test of those up-and-coming fighters who fought so many times, I think it's going to be the best year ever competitively in the Octagon. I don't think we'll ever look back and say there's been a better year in terms of overall skill, overall talent, and just sheer number of fighters and what they can do in those fights in the Octagon.
Yeah, in 2020, we saw a lot of turnover in these divisions, and largely for what we said. There was inactivity from some of the top names, and then the mid-pack guys fought a ton, and so they moved up into those rankings, setting up 2021 to where we're going to see how legitimate some of these guys are. They had a great year last year. Sure, I mean, and we mentioned Kevin Holland for one. You know, I want to see him against a top 5 ranked guy. Let's see where he really is. I want to see where Tony Ferguson falls back into the thing after his terrible 2020 year. You know, I want to see if Khabib fights again. You know, does he come out of retirement and fight again? You know, but 2021, they laid the groundwork in 2020, and I agree with you. We're going to see a lot of really big time competitive fights in 2021. And like you said, we're going to get to see where the dust settles. We're going to get to see where all these divisions stand, because I feel like the end of 2020, there's a lot of questions unanswered.
Yeah, and look, I always start at the top, and by the top, I mean the big boys, the heavyweights, and Stipe only fought once. He won the trilogy fight, the legacy fight, the greatest of all-time fight over Daniel Cormier, which I argued going in, if DC won the fight, there'd be no way he'd be the greatest heavyweight champion of all time. But Stipe, on the other hand, even though he never, and I wish we could have seen him fight prime Cain when Cain was healthy, I wish we could have seen a couple other fights, but he did pretty much clean out the division. He has beaten all the legends and all the big-time fighters in his era. But at 38 years of age and having proven himself to the nth degree and won that fight against DC, he's going to stick around and fight, it looks like, Francis Ngannou. And here's what I want to see in 2021, and no one's listening to me. Please, Dana, for God's sake, listen to me. You cannot have Stipe fight Ngannou first, and I love Francis with all my heart. Really, just what a great guy. And he deserves it. But he's already been beaten by Stipe. The only fight to make it heavyweight right now is Jon Jones versus Stipe. That's my biggest story of 2021. Jon Jones making an attempt to put that heavyweight strap around his waist to become a 2-division champ, maybe feeling like he has to do that to cement his status as the GOAT, because look at all the other people he's competing against for GOAT status. So many of them won titles in 2 divisions, whether, you know, you're talking about Henry Cejudo or Conor McGregor, or, you know, different fighters winning belts in 2 divisions. Adesanya's going to try to do it now. It seems to be the thing to where you have to do that to make yourself that kind of fighter. And then the fact that DC did it, Daniel Cormier did it, and, you know, it's just one of those things where you almost feel like if you're Jones, to be that guy, you have to do it. But if Jones loses at heavyweight before he gets the title shot, or if Stipe loses the belt first, you don't have that quote-unquote GOAT versus GOAT, heavyweight, light heavyweight fight that you only have potentially once, and I still have to think something's going to happen, the gods, something, the universe, Jeff, to give us Jones-Stipe before either one has a chance to lose.
Hopefully. I mean, I agree with you. That's the fight to make. That Jones, Stipe, that's the fight to make. You want to do that before you give Jones the opportunity to lose at heavyweight, and you want to do it before Stipe maybe gets dethroned, because the heavyweight turnaround is the biggest turnaround in any division in mixed martial arts. You know, odds are, history tells us, the heavyweight title is probably going to change in 2021. We just don't know with who, and that's just what history dictates. That's not an indictment on Stipe or anything. You know, maybe he may very well hold the title all year, but history dictates the title. If one title is going to change hands in 2021, it's probably going to be the heavyweight title. Now, I don't know if that'll be Francis or Jon Jones, but I agree with you. That's the heavyweight fight to make. I don't know what happens if Jones loses. You know, that's an interesting thing. Does he go back after putting on all that weight? Because that's why we haven't seen him yet, right? He wants to make the proper debut at heavyweight. And so he's putting all of his eggs in one basket in a way. Jones' story in 2021 is definitely one of the ones I'm most interested in. Can Jon Jones go up and defeat the heavyweight division like he did the light heavyweight division? And I think Stipe's a terrible matchup for Jon Jones, but we're going to see. Hopefully we see.
He's been a terrible matchup for almost anyone, but when you look at Stipe versus Jones, he's got a big weight advantage. He's got the height, you know, that Jones has, and he's got every physical attribute and then some. Jones very explosive, very quick, also tremendous takedowns, but will that strength? He's had trouble with takedowns at light heavyweight in some of his recent fights and hasn't really been that same Jon Jones that he used to be. But you adapt and you change your style based on other people changing their style to you, and that is a great story. So let me give you a scenario here, Jeff Cain. This is what I love. I love these shows like this. So we sit here and we talk about Jon Jones going up to heavyweight, but, and this is a big but, let's say Ngannou beats Stipe, all right? And Adesanya beats Jan Blachowicz. Now, the Jan Blachowicz fight doesn't do anything for me if I'm Jon Jones, and I really like Jan. Great dude. It took me 20 minutes in an interview to learn how to say his name, and he was patient with me the whole day. It's Blachowicz. It's Blachowicz, right? So anyway, think about this, Jeff. Izzy beats Jan. Everyone wants to see Izzy versus Jones. If you ask 100 MMA fans right now, what is the fight you want to see more than any other fight in 2021? 90 of them are going to say Izzy versus Jones, if not more. So what if Adesanya beats Blachowicz and that fight's coming up right around the corner? Does Jones then say, hey, I'm going to stay at light heavyweight one more fight, but then he's chasing the belt that he already vacated? I don't know. It seems like a little bit of a mess there, so that's an option. And then if Ngannou beats Stipe and you lose that GOAT versus GOAT, Jones and Ngannou would be the matchup for the belt at heavyweight. And I like Jon's chances way, way more against Francis than I do against Stipe.
Yeah, I think that Stipe just matches up perfectly with Jon Jones. I think he's the better striker, and I think speed-wise, they're comparable. With Ngannou, I think for Stipe and Jones, right, you've got to get past that first round, or at least the first half of that first round. You've got to slow him down. You've got to get that power diminished. Because if he connects in the first minute of a fight, usually the fight's over.
Yeah.
Luckily, though, he's wide, he gets wild, and he's not as technical as Stipe or Jones, in my opinion. But he makes up for it with just his brutal strength, man, and his explosiveness. You know, you never know. It's just he's kind of standing there relaxed, and the next thing you know, he's throwing off 15 punches, and somebody's laying face down on the canvas. I agree with you. I like Jones better against Francis than I do against Stipe. I just think Stipe matches up with Jon's skill set extremely well everywhere.
Everywhere, and his brute strength. I mean, just look what he did with the underhooks and walking DC back to the fence every time he tried for a takedown and just holding him there and using that leverage and that height and that power to take care of business there. And I like that matchup a lot for Stipe too. Meanwhile, when you look down at middleweight, man, and here's something that's interesting to me as I'm looking at these divisions and just trying to like play around and say, hey, everybody likes to play matchmaker. When I'm looking at middleweight, and because at heavyweight, look, you got Stipe and you got Ngannou. I mean, after that, you got Blades and Rosenstruik and Lewis. And I mean, that division thins out really fast. I will say Cyril Gane is a guy I'm keeping my eye on for 2021, but you know, he's one of those guys that, you know, you don't know until you know, right? So really, other than Stipe and Francis, Jones being the wild card there, the heavyweight division gets really thin really fast. Light heavyweight also, with Glover as the #1 contender, Santos, who just lost to Glover Teixeira, you've got Dominic Reyes, who lost to Jan Blach. There's really nobody at light heavyweight who's a title contender right now either. So now you have Izzy coming up. Maybe Izzy becomes the 2-division champ. Do you do an interim title fight at 185? And if you do, who fights Robert Whittaker in that fight?
Ooh.
That's a tough one, right?
Yeah, I don't like interim titles. But I understand the need for them, especially for a promotion and you promote it. You know, if your champion's on the sidelines for a long time or going up in a division and doing other things, you got to put out an interim belt. I hate interim belts. You know, there's a champion, and then that's it. There's only one champion. I don't know who would fight Whittaker.
Paulo's coming off the loss to Izzy, right? Cannonier's coming off the loss to Whittaker. Darren Till, no, right? So I'm going to throw a name at you. We just talked about him a lot when he beat Hermanson. What about Vettori, the only guy who really fought Izzy that tough? What about Marvin Vettori and in that situation maybe stepping up into an interim title fight against Whittaker? Then if he wins, you set up a rematch against Izzy, which was Izzy's toughest fight in the UFC so far.
Yeah, that would be smart matchmaking, right? You set up for the future no matter what happens with Izzy's 205-pound fight. He comes right back into a potentially a big rematch and an interesting rematch, as you said, because he was able to fight Izzy tougher than anybody else has fought Izzy. I'm interested in that. I like that scenario, man. I think that's an interesting layout, and it's good matchmaking. It sets up, that good matchmaking always sets up the next match, right?
It absolutely
and
does.
That does that.
So you like it. Okay, well, we're covering, hey, heavyweight, light heavyweight, middleweight. Now we're here. So, I mean, there are some things we could get into, like emerging fighters you think will, have a good run this coming year in those divisions. And, there's so many of them. I mean, we talked about Kevin Holland being our fighter of the year, for example. Here's a guy who could make a run. But I think it's interesting, too, when you look at what's going on in the UFC overall, the changing of the guard on one level, but some of the divisions have gotten really thin in terms of big names and people who could make title runs. They've been cleaned out. It seems like, especially you look at heavyweight, light heavyweight, and middleweight, it's very thin in those divisions right now. And I don't ever remember it being so thin at the top like that. But where it's thin there, we make up for it big time at 70, 55, and 45. I mean, those divisions are just stacked as we head into this year. And Jeff, as I look at the welterweight division, we didn't get to see Usman and Burns, and that was the fight we all wanted to see for the title. It's been a little bit cursed. It's coming up again. Colby Covington's in that mix, and we want to see him fight Masvidal. But you have legitimately in Burns and Covington and Usman 3 great fighters at the top of that division who could easily be a champ at any time in the history of the division. Then you look at Edwards. Masvidal can go on a run. Stephen Thompson, Wonderboy, looks like he's back. We don't know if Tyron Woodley's ever going to regain what he had, but just those guys alone, even Neil Magny, I'll throw him in there, see what he does against Chiesa. But Masvidal, Edwards, Burns, Covington, Usman, that's a very, very stacked division at the top. And there's looks for some great fights coming up in 2021 at 170.
Oh, 100%. That's a stacked division, and they have 2020 booked up basically with all of those names. What's weird about 2020 though, or 2021, is going to be just what we dealt with in 2020. There's going to be people drop off fight cards at the last minute. And going back to the 200 or the heavyweight division, we know if Jon Jones isn't going to fight Chael Sonnen on short notice, there's no way in hell he's fighting Stipe or Francis or Izzy or anyone on short notice. Yeah. And so that kind of quells that. If one of those heavyweight guys fall out of that fight, I don't see Jones stepping up on short notice. He's got his own legacy, and he's going to want a full training camp. But in the welterweight division, I think that you have the possibility of a lot of people filling in on short notice in some of these fights. And it's kind of crazy because I don't think the fall off is that far. I think Neil Magny can compete with any one of those guys, for instance.
Yep. And then you have Khamzat, Chimaev in either division, really looking more like a 170, but that Edwards fight off again. But I can't wait to see what happens at 170. Do you think Kamaru holds the belt for the entire year? Do you really think he's that good? I love him. I think he's amazing, but I also know how good Colby is, and I have a feeling about Burns with that high-level jiu-jitsu and the grappling and the striking under Henry Hoofton, what he's been able to do.
Man, it's hard to tell. He has a skill set where he could hold the belt for all of 2021, for sure. But it's hard to maintain that level of performance. And so where we look at other divisions, you're going to fight a really tough guy in your next fight, and then it drops off. And so you're going to get a fight to where, I don't say you can't cruise or whatever, but you're going to get a guy who's less dangerous. There are no less dangerous guys in that division. And so let's say that he gets past, his next fight. He's still got another fight with a guy who's equally skill set or equal or comparable. I don't know. I like Usman. I think he's got the athletic ability and the skill set to hold the title for a minute. But he also is in a division to where there's 5 or 6 guys that could take it from him on any given night.
On any given night, and it's not the same case in I mean, any time in any division, of course, but not like that division where you're looking, it's really that even and that close to the top. And I literally can't wait. I'm salivating thinking about the Masvidal-Colby fight, because I think that's a very, very bad matchup for Jorge Masvidal, and I think Colby's going to dominate him, and I think he's going to yap the whole time leading up to the fight, and he's going to yap the whole time during and after the fight. And, Masvidal's a very entertaining dude as well, so it's going to be a lot of fun. And, of course, he could baptize him. You never know. Street Jesus could baptize him in that fight, but we'll see, man. And then, you're looking at middleweight. Adesanya's looking to have light heavyweight and middleweight, maybe go back and forth. Maybe he leaves 185 altogether. He's got his eye on Jon Jones. And, everyone wants to take Jon Jones's O, and everyone can talk all they want about that stupid Matt Hamill fight, but that's not a loss. Jones has never lost. So will it be Stipe? Will it be Ngannou? Will it be Adesanya who gets the first crack to hand Jon Jones that L? And, that's a big storyline too. And you're talking about Usman at 170. The wild card that I keep thinking about after the way he finished the year is Wonderboy. I can't help but think we're going to see Wonderboy in a title fight this year.
He closed out 2020 good. and kind of set that division back on notice. You know, we kind of written him off a little bit. And he's like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm right here. And we know that he's good enough to compete with the top guys in the division. I mean, he's been a top guy in the division for years now. I agree with you. I'm keeping my eye on Wonder Boy because while we've seen some turnaround in some of these divisions, Wonder Boy's kind of the mainstay in that division. He was able to get his footing in 2020 and solidify himself. I'm still a contender in this division.
No doubt. And as we move forward, things we're looking forward to in 2021 are things we'd like to see in 2021 in the UFC and MMA. Jim Grieshaber, Jeff Cain, MMA Weekly, right here on YouTube and Facebook and everywhere else on the planet. You know how we roll in the digital age. But Jeff, 155 is clearly the most stacked division maybe in the history of the UFC. I mean, it kind of reminds me of light heavyweight when you were at the end of Chuck and Tito and you had Rampage and Rashad and Machida and Shogun. I mean, that division was just one after the other. But 55 right now. Now, we know Dana's meeting with Khabib is coming up on Fight Island, and he's still the champ, even though he's saying he retired. He wants to maybe be 30-0. We don't know if the GSP fight, if he does fight Georges St. Pierre, would be at 155, which I highly doubt. But if GSP did come to 155 and win that belt, good Lord, a 3-division champ and hasn't fought again in years. But as it stands right now in that division, we start the year off in just a couple of weeks. Conor McGregor, less than a couple weeks. Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier 2, right? We know what happened in the first fight. And then also on that card, you have Michael Chandler making his UFC debut against Dan Hooker. But when you look at 155, Khabib's the champ, Gaethje, Poirier, Charles Oliveira, who's on fire more than anyone in the promotion right now. Conor McGregor's at 4. Ferguson's at 5. We don't know where he's going to be. Dan Hooker 6. And the former champ, Rafael dos Anjos, who looked really good his last time out, is at 7. So you have 7 fighters who have either been a champion, could be a champ, and you look at that list, Michael Chandler's not even on there. Michael Chandler's a former Bellator champ. Justin Gaethje, a former World Series of Fighting champ. Dos Anjos, a former UFC champ. Ferguson, a former interim champ. Poirier, a former interim champ. Conor McGregor, a former 2-division champ. That is a stacked division.
Yeah, I think that division's more interesting if Khabib is retired in a lot of ways, because then it's just a free-for-all, right? We can do a tournament. Let's do an 8-man tournament, and decide who's the champion.
Royal Rumble, one at a time. Bring them in.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to do it all in one night, but you could absolutely set it up through multiple events where we crown a champion from an 8-man tournament. Because I don't think anybody touches Khabib. For years, I was thinking, this guy has a chance. This guy's got a shot. After the way he looked in his last fight, man, nobody's beaten Khabib for a minute. And so I think the division's more interesting with he's not in there in a way, because it's just Khabib's going to hold the title. Now that he may be retired and he's out of that situation, all of those guys are going to get to fight each other. We're going to see the lightweight division is going to get nuts in 2021. A lot of it's going to come into focus, so to speak. We're going to start seeing like where Tony falls in, where Conor comes back to, where these other guys are, is there going to be that new star that steps up that we don't know about? Chandler, I mean, my God, him and Hooker, that fight of the night. Just give him the check now.
Oh, good Lord. Good. And I think Hooker's going to give Mike Chandler a lot of problems, man. I mean, if he had struggled against Pitbull, he's in for a fight of his life against Hooker.
That's going to be that fight could end quick or not, because both those guys go at each other, are going to go at each other hard and go at each other right as soon as the bell sounds. Yeah, that's a tough first fight, right? Debut fight for Chandler. But then again, he was a champion. He was a Bellator champion. So you come over here in the UFC, you don't get an easy fight. They throw you straight to the wolves right out of the gate. I'm interested to see how he does in the UFC, though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very interested to see how Mike Chandler does in the UFC. Here's a guy who legitimately, can compete with anyone on any night, and he's lost to some really good fighters. He's had some big wins, but once you get to the UFC, guys have told me it's a whole new ballgame. But we have seen Eddie Alvarez do very well coming over, and we've seen Gaethje do very well coming over from WSOF. Speaking of which, Jeff, that lightweight division, Conor Poirier, I won't even predict a winner, but the winner of that fight should fight whom? I'm looking at this, and people are going to say it should be the winner of Chandler and Hooker. Hell no, man. Oliveira's staking his claim, but I still feel, and I'll be honest with you, I feel like you got to give Justin Gaethje a shot. Do you maybe book a Gaethje versus Oliveira, or do you let Gaethje fight the winner of the Poirier-Conor fight, because Gaethje just coming off that title shot and the complete dismantling of Tony Ferguson, which Oliveira can also lay claim to, but there are so many options at the top of that division depending upon how Dana's talk with Khabib goes this week.
Yeah, Gaethje's loss to Khabib doesn't drop him anywhere. I still consider him the number 1 or 2 guy. Conor McGregor's the wild card, right? He's got the big name and he's the former champion, and so that's the kind of the wild card in that division on title fights. I agree with you. I think Charles Oliveira should get the winner. I would like to see Gaethje get one more fight to kind of rebound from his title loss and then throw him right back in there. He didn't fall anywhere by losing. Every one of them have lost to Khabib. So how does that drop you further than it dropped other people that have the same loss on their record? Yeah, the lightweight division is completely stacked. I look forward to seeing how Gaethje rebounds. I look forward to seeing how Ferguson falls in there, and I look forward to seeing where Chandler fits into the UFC. Because he's an extremely aggressive fighter, man. I mean, he kind of reminds me in a way of Gaethje, but not quite. They're not the same fighter, but their approach to fights are similar.
Oh my God, Chandler and Gaethje, just ring the bells right now. Just lock them in there, let one of them out only when the other one is complete. And I didn't say in that one, like, no submissions, no stoppages, just let them go, man. Like, I want to see like the gladiator style fight between those two guys. Jeff, what about 145, man? Max Holloway, a lot of people, myself included, think he beat Alexander Volkanovski last time out in the rematch, and now he comes back to kick off the year. First fight in 3 years on network broadcast TV for the UFC on ABC, which is this weekend, which is Max Blessed Holloway trying to get that Blessed Express back on track and going full speed ahead against Calvin Kattar, who's ranked number 6 and a very dangerous fighter at number 6 for Holloway. Almost more to lose than to gain here for Max, when I feel like, and a lot of people feel like, he should get that rematch against Volko again. And Brian Ortega, who just came back after a couple of years, should have to have another fight first. But, I mean, I could see it going either way.
Yeah, I could see it going either way. I think I scored Max winning that last fight. Yeah. And I felt like a rematch could have been warranted, but I understand, Max held the belt for a minute. You had some turnover right here, kind of make Max fight his way back. I don't think that's a bad plan either, because, whenever he gets back there, he's definitely the number 1 contender, right? Although I think he already is. But that's a dangerous fight. And like you brought up, that's a fight where he has everything to lose and nothing really to gain. He's not going to gain anything by beating the number 6 ranked guy in the world. He only has, there's only downside for him in that fight. Max, though, is Max, man. It's Blessed Holloway, right? I expect him to come
anybody
back,
anywhere.
Yeah, fight anybody anywhere and give him a tough fight, And so I anticipate Max to win that fight, and then hopefully get that rematch. But who knows, man? It's the fight game, and there's not a lot of drop off from 1 to 6 in that particular division, and so who knows what's going to happen. That's why we have the fights. But I predict that Max will get back to a title fight in 2021.
Does Beat make big noise this year? Is this the year we see him get gold around his waist? Yair Rodriguez, obviously, with the suspension right now, but the other guy in Zabit is huge right now in terms of the anticipation and people wondering if he can take it to that level. But after the way Brian Ortega looked against the Korean Zombie, it's not hard to argue that he gets the title shot, and a very clearly focused, intense, much improved Brian Ortega after that long layoff. He looks to me like he might be the best guy and the most dangerous guy in that division, looking to go on a long title run. I think T-City has that strap by the end of the year. I'm going to say it.
Yeah, I mean, he could. I mean, it depends. Does he run into Holloway before that? It's hard to say, man. I agree, though. That is the perfect example of a guy who took a beating, took the right amount of time off, and came back and looked phenomenal.
This is one of your soapbox days. This is where Jeff's going to be in the town square screaming at the top of his lungs, right? Take the time off after the beatdown.
Exactly, especially whenever you get beat like that. And he did that. And heading into that fight, he was on such a good run and destined for a title is what we all thought, right? And then he just got dismantled so bad. And then he came back and looked better than he's ever looked. And so now we're talking about him heading into 2021. You think he's going to hold the strap. I think he's definitely going to get there. I don't know who's going to be waiting on him when he gets there. But, man, that guy, he could absolutely hold the title in 2021. It's just a matter of the way everything plays out, the way the cards fall, and who faces who and who's available when. And but, yeah, T-City, man, he was a kind of a guy because of the layoff that I'd sort of forgot about until his last fight. And then I was like, holy shit, Man, do I miss, Brian.
Changed teams, changed partners, changed everything about his approach. Just methodical, just a thinking man's fighter in that fight. It was a chess match for him. So smart, so patient, didn't get rattled one bit, didn't let anything take him off his game plan against the very dangerous Korean Zombie. And, I'm not going to make a career out of one fight, but I love the way he looked in that fight. Voko's a beast. I mean, the guy used to play rugby at 235 pounds, jacked, and he's the 145-pound champ, so his strength is superhuman. And he did, in a lot of people's eyes, come back and beat Max in that last fight. So we'll see. Meanwhile, at bantamweight, we have another champ who's, I think personally, and the last time this happened was when they gave Khabib the belt for the win over Al Iaquinta, and I was not a fan of that. But when I look at Petr Yan and how he won the belt at 35 to beat Aldo, who had never even been a champ at 35, Aldo's coming off a loss. Like, to me, that wasn't a legit title win for Yan. They might be calling him the champion. He might rightfully be deemed the champion. But in my mind, in the court of Jim Grieshaber's opinion, he is not the champion at 135. That belt is open. Henry Cejudo was right when he said keeping it warm for me. But so many fighters in that division. Now, Cody Garbrandt still might go down and fight Figueiredo, but Frankie Edgar reemerging. Rob Font is coming on strong. Marlon Moraes is on a little bit of a downswing. Aldo's looking pretty good, but Corey Sandhagen, Aljamain Sterling, Petr Yan. So Yan and Sterling are going to fight for the title, and then you got Sandhagen, maybe Cody Garbrandt, and Frankie Edgar there at 35.
Yeah, I agree with you on it's not his fault. You fight who they throw at you, and they put a belt on the line, and he won that fight. So he's the champion, but I agree he's not the proven champion.
No.
I don't think he fought the best guy in the division to win it. I think that there's several people. Aldo is definitely at the tail end of his career. There's so much tape on Aldo, right? Aldo hasn't changed much. Aldo does what he does.
Yep.
And either you can stop him or you can't, but he's not there's no mystery to Aldo anymore. And so, I agree with you on your assessment of that win. That wasn't a championship-level win, in my opinion, but it was for the title. So I'm not going to take anything away from Yan, but I don't feel like he's a proven champion. In fact, I'll say he's the least proven champion in his division on the roster.
Do you think Cejudo comes back and wins the belt again? I guess it's a two-part question. Do you think he comes back? And if he does, do you think he wins the belt?
I think Cejudo comes back. But Henry's got choices to make, right? He could come back in a couple of divisions.
He wants 45
I don't know that
in
we're
Volko.
going to see him come back full-fledged. Yeah, I don't think that he's going to come back full-fledged Cejudo and fight in 3 different divisions or 2 different divisions. But I think he'll come back, and I think he'll fight for a title. He's just going to have to decide which one of those guys he wants to call out. And how do you not give him a title fight?
How about a BMF tournament? I like that idea with Figueiredo, with Yan, with a couple other ones in there, and then Cejudo at the end of it. I don't know. A guy can dream, right? But anything that makes money this day and age, we know is going to roll. Meanwhile, at 125, Figueiredo looks to be the makings of a dominant champion, but what a crazy year, right? He's way overweight for the first Benavidez fight, which to me disqualifies him for Fighter of the Year, and we've had that discussion here on our shows. But the Moreno fight exposed some big holes that people didn't know were there with Figueiredo. We thought he was just going to dominate everybody, and then Moreno came in with that boxing and those jabs and those hooks, especially that hook, that left hook, and made Figueiredo look very human in that fight, and it wasn't something that we had seen before. So Figueiredo the champ, Moreno definitely deserves the rematch for sure. There's nobody really in that division to throw into a title fight after that, which means that Figueiredo, should he win the rematch, will he be talking about going up to challenge for the 35 or Lul Cejudo? I can tell you this, Henry's not fighting him at 125. I would bet one of my 3 kids that Henry Cejudo will not cut to 125 again, and I have that on really good authority from him and his trainer. I mean, I cannot see him doing that again.
There's no reason to, right? I mean, there's no reason to. If you come back at 145 or 135. Why come back at 125? That doesn't make any sense. It's like McGregor going back down. He's not going back down. He's if anything, he'll go up to welterweight. And I think that the same way with Figueiredo. If anything, he's going to go up to 35. But that fight going to a majority draw and the Moreno fight almost saved that division, right? We have one more fight in that division for sure. And hopefully before that happens, some other people get to build themselves up and kind of keep that division. Because if there's only 2 contenders in that division, I don't think it sticks around very long. Figueiredo, I think the last fight exposed that if he doesn't get you out of there early, he's kind of gone to the toolbox. There's nothing new coming out at him. And so Moreno kind of exposed that, and kind of exposed that Figueiredo overcommit. You know, he's a headhunter. He'll overcommit, and the holes start opening up the longer the fight goes. And we saw that, or I definitely saw that. And so I'm looking forward to that rematch, and I'm not sure Figueiredo wins it. You know, if I'm looking back, heading into a rematch, Figueiredo thought he was going to walk right over Moreno. You know, and Moreno thought he was going to win, but after the fight, he knows not only can he win, he can beat him. He can get him out of there. I mean, he had Figueiredo hurt several times where I feel like nobody really thought that was going to happen.
No, and Moreno was hurt at the end of that fight, too. Couldn't really throw in that last round. He didn't blame the injury, but he did say he had a little bit of an injury, and, you know, that's something that really affected him. Figueiredo had the hospitalization the night before, the food poisoning or whatever it was, and so I can't wait to see that rematch, and that's going to be amazing. 3 weeks, no camp.
Yeah, you're going to have a full training camp here, and I think Moreno's going to go into the rematch a lot more confident than he did the first time. Not that he didn't have confidence heading into the first fight, but, you know, in a rematch when you think, I got this guy now. I got him. I can beat him. You know, he's not as fast as I thought he was. He didn't hit as hard as I thought he did. You know, he's not a warrior. He's not a cyborg. He's a warrior, but he's not this robot. You know, I can beat him. He's just another man. And I felt like Moreno left the octagon with that feeling, and I don't know that Figueiredo is going to be more confident heading into the rematch than he was the first time.
I mean, he's super confident. He's got all the makings of a great champion, but Moreno, what a fighter. I mean, Dana White said it perfectly. He's a typical Mexican fighter, man. The Julio Cesar Chavez style, just counter-punching you and hitting you with that hook. I mean, we saw it with Ryan Garcia, right? And Canelo with that hook. I mean, that's a trademark, a patent, and so that's something that I can't wait to see in the rematch. But the women's divisions, Jeff, we could go all day, and we got a little bit of time left in the show, but I want to start at the bottom and start with strawweight. And I wish we had an atom weight because I think my girl Michelle Waterson would probably be the champ. But at strawweight, Weili Zhang. I mean, that all-time epic champion versus champion, the very best of Joanna Jędrzejczyk and the very best of Weili Zhang in March in Vegas. Now you have Rose Namajunas, who won a great fight against Jessica Andrade, who's now obviously up at flyweight to challenge Valentina, and that might be Valentina's most legit challenge in that weight class. But people are talking about now Esparza, and Weili Zhang is going to be that next fight. Thug Rose is kind of a wild card in that division. She looked great against Andrade, and I think she could do really well against Zhang, but really it's going to be Weili, Joanna, and Rose in that division. I can't see anybody else wearing that belt.
No, I can't either. And, you know, I respect Carla Esparza a lot. You know, that girl,
former champ.
Yeah, former champ, and she's no quit in her. You know, I mean, we've seen that girl get the crap beat out of her, and he'll still stand there and take that stuff. You know, that fight, the first fight, or the fight with Joanna, was just brutal, but she stayed in there until, you know, almost to the point where I was like, throw in the damn towel. But I don't think she can beat Weili.
No.
I think it's a terrible matchup. I think that's a terrible matchup. I agree with you. It's Joanna, it's Rose, and let's see where the chips fall. But I don't see Esparza winning back the title she once had.
No, and it's got to be Weili against Rose, and then Joanna is in there somewhere, and then you move up to flyweight. Andrade is now the number one contender there. Saw an opportunity, saw an opening in that division, and took it. You know, obviously with a big win against Chookagian, who's right behind her in the rankings. So Valentina Shevchenko against Jessica Andrade, a former champ. Those types of fights don't come along very often. Two girls who are brutal on the inside. They love those punches, those elbows, those knees, just vicious. That would be a vicious fight, man. I really hope we get to see that one soon.
Oh, I hope we get to see that one as well. That's a fight that comes down to distance, right? If Valentina can keep it on the outside where her kicks come into play, she's going to have a really good night. If that fight takes place on the inside, who the hell knows what's going to happen? But I think I agree with you. I think that Jessica is the biggest threat to Valentina's title that she's going to have faced yet. I mean, outside of when she faced Amanda in a different division. You know what I mean? I'm talking about in this division.
And she's not a natural 35er for everyone who thinks that Amanda, those were close wins for Amanda Nunes. So she does get that GOAT status, and she went up to 45 and beat Cyborg, so for sure. But Valentina is not a 35er. She's clearly a 25er, and, you know, that's just one of those things where they are two different weight classes, and it's hard to compare the two. But I like to take the approach, Jeff, of saying, okay, we have the greatest 25er and the greatest 35er as the two greatest female fighters who have ever stepped in a cage.
I can see that fight happening. I can see that fight happening. Now, Valentina does want a third match with Amanda. She says that eventually that's what she wants. And, man, I want to see it.
But why would Amanda why?
Nope. I know.
You're
Why would
Amanda.
Amanda take it? Why would Amanda take it? I know. So Valentina's in a difficult spot here. So I'll go back to what you just said. A champion versus champion, then all of a sudden she's a 2-division champion, right? Now she has a little more weight to go in there and fight Amanda that third time. And so I feel like that fight can happen, but Valentina's going to have to do a few things to make it to where it makes sense for everybody involved, particularly Amanda, because there's no reason for Amanda to take that fight. Although I'll watch those two fight 10 times in a row.
Oh, they're both so good.
And those fights were so close. Both of them were so close. But yeah, I don't think anybody wants to see the third match except for Valentina and me, And so I think Valentina, what the angle you were going at is to get 2 titles and then start talking about how you can hold 3. And now all of a sudden people forget that you lost the 2 fights and just want to see if you can win 3 divisional belts. And so I feel like that fight can happen, but it would be at the end of 2021 if it did.
What about Wei Li and Valentina? Now that, to me, Zhang goes up and takes a shot at the 125 belt, because Valentina's not going down to 115. So you'd have a 125 title matchup with Wei Li Zhang against Shevchenko, and mention you're already going to have Zhang with the title defense in Asia, in China, which would be amazing. But that is a fight that we definitely could see happening this year. And the other thing, Jeff, is there's literally nobody left on God's green earth for Amanda Nunes to fight. As you look through the rankings, and she's beaten Durand May, she's beaten Holm, Aspen Ladd's working her way up, Pennington, Irene Aldana just lost to Hallie Holm. There's nobody in that division, in either division, and forget featherweight, that thing's toast on the female side. Who is there for Amanda Nunes to fight? Like who? Nobody.
There's nobody, which is why I think that third fight can happen. Because Valentina's going to clear out that division if she wins her next fight, in my opinion. That she's going to pretty much have cleared out the top people who can go in there. Then we're talking about people coming up to her weight class or coming down to her weight class. And so if there's nobody for Amanda to fight and there's nobody for Valentina to fight, then why not go ahead and do the third match? But like you said, Amanda has nothing to gain from that. 0. And so I don't know if Amanda takes that fight. But then again, why wouldn't you take a fight that you've won twice already?
Yeah, no doubt. And I wanna talk about, before we wrap this up, Jeff Cain. I'm Jim Grieshaber. I literally, we've talked about every division. We've talked about fights we want to see. We've talked about what we hope to see in 2021. But when I look at the UFC right now, and I look at the possibilities for this year, I want to see the fans. We want to see what Jones does at heavyweight. We want to see what Izzy does at light heavyweight. We want to see if Cejudo comes back. We want to see what Khabib does. That 155 division could keep us entertained the whole year just by itself. Throw in the 45. Who's Amanda Nunes going to fight? So many storylines in 2021. But as I look forward to turning the corner and seeing what's going to happen this year, I want to see a lot more of the top fighters, like you said. But I honestly think the most intriguing storyline of the year is, what will Conor McGregor do?
I think that Conor McGregor and Jon Jones are the most intriguing storylines for me. Does Conor McGregor come back and does he get the title back? Does he fight more than once? Does he fight often? And then the Jon Jones, what happens at heavyweight? Those are the biggest stories in my mind that I'm looking forward to 2021. But, man, I just want the fans back. I want the UFC to be able to travel again. We have events in Vegas and Abu Dhabi. Well, and now the fans are open for the Abu Dhabi event. But, I want to see them travel to Chicago again. Let's go to New York, Seattle, everywhere again. That's kind of what I miss, is that, there's kind of a circuit. I live in Kentucky, so whenever they would come to Cincinnati and Columbus and this side of the country, New York, New Jersey, Nashville, Atlanta, I hit all of those, and they just don't exist anymore. And now, granted, the fans can't be there anyway, but I really look forward to the UFC being able to take that Octagon on the road to different parts of the country and different parts of the world, and they're just not able to do that now. But I cannot wait. It's going to happen. It's going to happen, and it's probably going to happen sooner than we think, because there'll be a country, there are countries out there doing really well with COVID right now. Yep. And we could host an event in, say, New Zealand right? There's no reason why Robert Whittaker could fight on the card. You know,
the
there's
city kickboxing guys would love that.
Yeah, you know, and so I feel like 2021 is going to be a weird year because we might just have these events in pop-up places like the event in Asia that they're considering. But I think we might pop up in a country that maybe the UFC's never been before because the opportunity presents itself.
Well, the fact that Wei Li could fight in China for her belt being on the line, that's amazing in and of itself right there. You know, maybe Khabib fights in Russia, you know, like that, though, that would be China and Russia, and Dana White will solve all the world's problems. I mean, who cares who the president is? Just let Dana have at it, Dana. I mean, I'm never going to doubt you again. But the other thing that I wanted to say real quick here, too, as we turn the corner into 2021, I want to see that big super card. I want to see it at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. I want them to fill up that Raider Stadium for Conor McGregor against whomever at that point in time for the title, whether it be, you know, I don't know, oh God willing, it would be Khabib, but maybe Jones and Stipe on the same card, maybe that 3 super fight, you know, headlining events in a packed NFL stadium just off the Vegas Strip, late 2021, maybe that last fight week of the year that was always such a great fight card. Maybe we bring that back this year at Allegiant Stadium with 3 super fights at the top of the bill. And that, to me, is my dream.
Yeah, I think that could, because International Fight Week always took place in the summer, and I just don't think we're going to be ready to have a big fight card like that. But at the end of the year, which used to be the biggest fight cards, right? That makes a lot of sense. I don't know. I don't even know about going to an event like that. Could you imagine sitting? I've seen concerts at Soldier Field. You know, I've seen football games in these big arenas. Seeing a fight at one would just be weird. It'd just be kind of weird. But with the jumbotrons and stuff and the technology that we have now, compared to when I was seeing those things, it'd be probably amazing, right? You know, whenever I'm seeing those football games, whenever I was going to see them, you had a little bitty TV. You had it was hard to see. It was just more about being there and it's the ambiance and the experience. But now you're going to be able to see the fights and also be sitting up with 65,000 people at the top of the arena.
Yeah, and can you imagine whether it's Allegiant Stadium or Jerry Jones gets in on the bidding war and they try to do one in Dallas? But I still think it'd have to be Vegas. Nothing like a big fight in Vegas, a stadium fight with Conor McGregor, who could probably fill the damn thing by himself. But I really am excited to see what Conor McGregor does this year coming back, what Jones does at heavyweight. Will Cejudo come back? Will he have gold again? So many questions heading into 2021 with the UFC. Will anybody beat Amanda Nunes or Valentina Shevchenko? Will Stipe Miocic retire as the heavyweight GOAT with 1 or 2 more wins this year? He's 38 years old. So many storylines as we head into this year, and we start this week with Max Holloway and Calvin Kattar, then Michael Chiesa, Neil Magny, and then Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier 2 with Michael Chandler and Dan Hooker on the card. What a way to start the year. Jeff will be live for every weigh-in, live for most of these fight cards during the fights. The post-fight press conferences. We'll have our Sunday wrap-up show every week. All kinds of programming that we're rolling out on MMA Weekly to start what looks like it's going to be the greatest year in combat sports history, 2021.
I hope so. Every year is the greatest year, right? Every year is the greatest year, or that's how I look at it. So, but yeah, especially at the beginning of the year, and we're looking at all the possibilities. You know, this is the best time. It's the best time of year for fight fans because we got these couple of weeks off before the new year kicks off, before the events of the new year kick off, and all the possibilities, and we get to have these conversations because starting this weekend, those conversations are going to be solved.
It's going to be awesome here for us as well, and MMA Weekly, man, we are your source for MMA news and entertainment. The most trusted source in the world, the worldwide leader in mixed martial arts coverage since 2002. For Jeff Cain, I'm Jim Grieshaber saying thanks for being with us as we take our look ahead to 2021. You know where to keep it right here with MMA Weekly. We got you plugged in to the sport you love the most and the Ultimate Fighting Championship. We'll talk to you next time. I'm Jim Grieshaber. Make it a great day, everybody.